The morning I found out, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. That's the part nobody tells you about moments like this. It's never dramatic at first. It's just you, a quiet house, and something small that doesn't add up. I'd been meaning to review my credit card statement for 2 weeks. I kept putting it off. I'm 63 years old and I live alone since my husband passed 4 years ago, and some months the routine of managing money feels heavier than it should. So I'd been paying the minimum, telling myself I'd look at the full statement when I had the energy. That Tuesday morning, I finally opened the app. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough for the coffee to go completely cold. The balance was $4,200. I want you to understand something first, because the comments I've seen on stories like mine often miss this part. I am not a careless woman. I raised 2 children on a teacher's salary after my husband got laid off when the kids were young. I clicked coupons. I packed lunches. I drove a car for 11 years past a point where any sensible person would have traded it in. Money has never been something I took lightly. But I trusted my daughter-in-law. That's the part that still catches in my throat when I say it out loud. Her name is Teresa. She's been married to my son Kevin for 6 years. Tall, pretty, very good at seeming warm when she wants to be. She calls me by my first name, which I never loved, but never said anything about. She sends birthday cards that are signed in her handwriting but always feel slightly formal, like something you'd send to a neighbor you don't know well. I gave her access to my Visa card 2 years ago. Kevin had just started his own landscaping business, and money was tight for them. Teresa was working part-time at a salon while managing their 3-year-old daughter, my granddaughter Wren, who is the absolute love of my life. There was a month where Kevin's equipment broke down and they couldn't make rent. I helped. Of course I helped. I'm their mother and grandmother. That's what you do. I added Teresa as an authorized user on my card and told her it was for emergencies only. Car trouble, Wren's doctor visits, things like that. Just text me first so I know what's happening, I told her. She agreed. She hugged me. She said she didn't know what they'd do without me. For the first few months, the charges were exactly what I expected. A copay here, a gas fill up there. Once, a grocery run when Kevin was out of town. Small things. The kind of charges that felt like what the card was meant for. I stopped checking as carefully after that. I was paying on auto-pay, and the amount seemed manageable. When the balance crept up, I assumed I'd made some charges myself and forgotten. I'm not always perfect with tracking my own spending. I tell myself I'd look closer next month. Next month became next month. I went back through the full 12 months that Tuesday morning, line by line. On my phone screen, the coffee sitting untouched beside me. The charges started small. A restaurant called Harlow's in October, $87. I didn't recognize it, but told myself maybe Teresa had taken Wren somewhere and it was a special occasion. No text, but maybe she forgot. Then in November, a spa called Alara Day Spa, $210. Then a clothing boutique I'd never heard of, $340. Then Harlow's again, $124. Then Harlow's again, $124. Then a shop called Marisol Fine Goods, $580. My chest was getting tighter. December, another spa visit, $195. A restaurant called Clement's, $310. 2 charges for something called Halcyon Boutique Hotel, totaling $620. A jewelry store. A florist. A wine subscription box. January through March were the worst. The charges came faster and the amounts grew. A weekend stay at a resort called the Bridgewater in Nantucket. That single charge was $1,100. I had to put my phone down. I walked to the window and stood there looking at my backyard, at the bird feeder I'd put up after Gerald died because he loved birds, and I wanted something living out there. A cardinal was sitting on the edge of it. I watched it for a long time. I thought about all the dinners I'd eaten alone this past year, all the Sundays I'd invited Kevin and Teresa and Wren over, and Teresa had texted an hour before to say something had come up. Kevin would call later, apologetic, explaining that Teresa wasn't feeling well, or Wren was tired, or they had plans with her side of the family. I never pushed back. I didn't want to be that kind of mother-in-law. I thought about last December, when Kevin mentioned they were having a tough stretch financially and asked if I could skip Christmas gifts this year. Just do something small for Wren. I said, of course. I gave Ren a savings bond and a stuffed elephant. Kevin and Teresa gave me a candle. I went back to my phone. I pulled up the spa's website. Elara Day Spa was described as a luxury wellness experience. Their signature treatment, which appeared to be what Teresa had booked twice, was listed at $195 per session. I looked up Clements. It had a $4 sign rating on Google, the kind of restaurant where you don't sit down without a reservation. The Bridgewater in Nantucket had a photo on its website of a room with a fireplace, white linens, and a view of the water. Rooms started at $450 a night. I'm not an emotional woman generally. I don't say that to sound tough. It's just how I'm built. I process things quietly and alone, and then I decide what to do. Gerald used to say I was the calmest person he'd ever seen in a crisis and the most terrifying to argue with, because I'd already thought 10 steps ahead before I opened my mouth. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time thinking. The thing I kept coming back to wasn't the money. The money was real and it hurt, and we'll get to that. But what I couldn't stop turning over in my mind was the Sundays. Every time I'd been at home thinking they were busy or that Teresa wasn't feeling well, where were they? What was that $310 dinner in December? Who was at that table? I needed to know the full picture before I did anything. I have a friend, Patricia's neighbor actually. Her name is June, and she worked in bank compliance for 30 years before she retired. I called her that afternoon. I didn't tell her whose charges they were. I just asked her, in general terms, what the process was for disputing charges made by an authorized user. She explained it clearly. She told me that the primary cardholder is ultimately responsible for all charges, that removing an authorized user immediately stops future charges and doesn't require the other person's permission or knowledge. You can also set a spending alert, she said. Going forward, anything over a certain amount triggers a text to you. I know, I said. I should have done that from the beginning. Most people don't, she said, until they need to. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't call Kevin that day. I didn't call Teresa. I sat with it another 24 hours because I wanted to be sure of what I was going to do and why, and I didn't want to act from a place of pure hurt. Hurt makes you sloppy. It makes you say things you can't unsay, or do things that blow up in directions you didn't intend. What I wanted was for the right thing to happen. Not revenge, not drama, the right thing. The following Saturday, Kevin called to tell me they were coming for Sunday dinner. First time in almost 2 months. Teresa had apparently suggested it, which surprised me. Kevin sounded relaxed and happy on the phone, the way he gets when things are going well for him. He said Ren had been asking about me. I said I'd make pot roast. I didn't sleep well Saturday night. I kept running through the conversation I was going to have. I thought about all the ways it could go. I thought about Ren's face, the way she runs to me at the door and calls me Grandma Bev, and how none of this was her doing and none of this could touch what she and I have. I thought about Kevin, my son. I raised that boy to be decent and hardworking and honest, and I believe in my heart that he is those things. But I also know that loving someone the way he loves Teresa can make you not want to see things. Sunday came. I made the pot roast. I set the table properly the way my mother taught me, with the cloth napkins Gerald and I got as a wedding gift 38 years ago. I put Ren's plastic dinosaur plate at her spot because she refuses to eat off anything else. They arrived at 4. Kevin hugged me in the doorway. Ren launched herself at my legs before I could even step back. Teresa smiled and handed me a bottle of wine and said the house smelled wonderful. We ate dinner. Ren told me about a caterpillar she'd found at preschool. Kevin talked about a big landscaping contract he'd just signed. Teresa was pleasant, asking about my book club, refilling her own wine glass twice. I watched her. I watched her laugh at something Kevin said. I watched her cut Ren's meat into small pieces with the practiced efficiency of a mother who does it without thinking. I watched her look comfortable and at ease in my dining room, at my table, using my cloth napkins. After dinner, Kevin took Ren outside to see the bird feeder while I cleared the table. Teresa stayed in the kitchen to help. I want to be very honest about this moment, because I've thought about it many times since. I could have waited. I could have brought up the credit card another time, in a different setting, with Kevin present from the start. There are people who would say that was the smarter choice. But she was standing in my kitchen, in my house, and she had spent $4,000 of my money without a single text message or phone call or word of acknowledgement, and I looked at her and thought, if not now, when? I dried a serving dish and set it down on the counter. I went through my credit card statement this week, I said. She kept rinsing plates. Oh, all 12 months, I said. She turned off the water. She turned around slowly. Her face went very still in the way faces do when someone is trying to figure out how much you know before deciding how to respond. I saw everything, I said. I wasn't angry, or at least I didn't sound it. I kept my voice level, and even the way I used to talk to students who'd been caught in something and needed to hear a steady voice so they didn't panic. Ilara Day Spa, Clements, the Bridgewater in Nantucket, all of it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, those were emergencies. I looked at her. I mean, there were stressful times this year and… She stopped. Tried again. Kevin was working constantly and I was home alone with Ren and I just needed… You needed a $1,200 weekend in Nantucket, I said. She flushed. That sounds bad when you say it like that. Teresa. I set down the dish towel. I gave you that card for Ren's doctor visits. For car trouble. I asked you to text me first. In 2 years, you never texted once. I didn't want to worry you. You didn't want me to know, I said. She didn't answer that. Here is what I had decided in those 24 hours of sitting quietly and thinking. I was not going to scream. I was not going to cry. I was not going to threaten or accuse beyond what the facts already said. I was going to say what needed to be said, clearly, and then I was going to tell her what happened next. I removed you from the account 2 days ago, I said. I'm not adding you back. She looked up quickly. Okay, I understand. And I need Kevin to know what happened. Tonight. Her jaw tightened. Can we keep this between us? Just for now. He's been under so much stress and… No, I said. I'm not going to keep something like this from my son. Beverly. He needs to know, I said. Not because I want to cause problems between the two of you. Because he's my son, and because this involves money that I don't have unlimited amounts of. I'm retired, Teresa. I live on a fixed income and a pension, and what Gerald left, this wasn't vacation money that was just sitting there. This was money I need. I saw something shift in her face when I said that, something that might have been actual shame. I hope it was. Kevin came back inside with Ren just as I was putting the last of the dishes away. He read my face immediately. He's always been able to do that, even as a little boy, and asked what was wrong. We put a movie on for Ren in the living room and the 3 of us sat at the kitchen table. I let Teresa tell him. I thought that was important. She needed to say it herself. She did. To her credit, she didn't minimize it much. She told him about the charges, the restaurants, the spa, the Nantucket trip. Kevin got very quiet in the way he gets when he's trying not to show how much something has landed on him. He asked a few questions. He didn't look at me while Teresa was talking. When she finished, he looked at his hands for a long moment. Then he said, Mom, I'm sorry. I nodded. How much total? He asked. He was asking me, not her. Just over 4,000, I said. He closed his eyes briefly. We'll pay you back. I'll set up a payment plan, whatever you need. That's not what tonight is about, I said. I don't need a payment plan right now. I need us to have an honest conversation about what happened and how we move forward. We talked for almost 2 hours. It was not a comfortable conversation. There were tears. Teresa's once, briefly. Kevin was quiet for most of it, asking careful questions. What came out, slowly, was something more complicated than simple greed. Teresa had been lonely this past year in a way she hadn't told Kevin about. The business had consumed him, and she'd felt invisible, and somewhere in the spending she'd been filling something. I don't say that to excuse it. I say it because understanding why something happened is different from accepting that it was okay. Kevin heard things about his marriage that night that he needed to hear. I heard things too. Teresa told me that she had felt for a long time that she was never quite good enough in my house, that she sensed my reserve toward her and had interpreted it as judgment. I sat with that. I didn't agree with all of it, but I sat with it honestly. I asked myself if there were ways I had made her feel that, however unintentionally, and I found a few small answers I didn't entirely like. That doesn't make what she did acceptable. I want to be clear about that. Using someone's credit card without permission for personal luxuries is not a response to feeling underappreciated. It's a betrayal of trust, and it caused me real financial strain that took months to recover from. Both things can be true. She was hurting, and she handled it completely wrong. Before they left, Kevin confirmed that he would repay me. He asked if we could have Sunday dinners regularly again. I said yes. He hugged me for a long time in the doorway, the way he used to when he was a teenager and had messed something up and needed me to tell him we were still okay. Ren was asleep in his arms, her cheek pressed against his shoulder, completely unbothered by all of it. "We're still okay," I told him. Teresa was at the car, buckling Ren's car seat. She looked up and met my eyes across the driveway. I held her gaze for a moment. I didn't smile exactly, but I nodded. She nodded back. "That was 3 months ago. Kevin has sent me $400 a month since then, without fail. He set up the bank transfer himself. Teresa joined a local mothers group and, from what Kevin tells me, seems to be doing better. She texted me last week. Actually texted me, the way I'd always asked, to ask if I'd be willing to babysit Ren on a Friday evening. I said yes. Ren and I made chocolate chip pancakes for dinner because I'm the grandmother and I can do that. There are things that are different now between Teresa and me, and I think they will stay different. Not worse exactly, but more honest. We don't pretend to be closer than we are, and maybe that's okay. Maybe it's even better. Real relationships can hold tension without breaking. That's something I've learned in 63 years that I don't think you can fully understand when you're younger. I look at my credit card statement every single month now. Every line. I have a spending alert set for anything over $50. I know exactly where my money is and where it's going. And I will never again be in the position of discovering something like that on a Tuesday morning over cold coffee. If you are someone who has added a family member to your account for emergencies, please learn from my mistake. Set the alerts from day one. Review the statements every month. Not the minimum payment amount, the full statement. It takes 15 minutes, and it can save you months of financial stress and a very hard conversation at the kitchen table. The cardinal is still coming to Gerald's bird feeder. I saw him this morning, same as always, sitting on the edge of it like he owns the place. I thought about what Gerald would have said about all of this. He'd have been furious on my behalf for about 10 minutes, and then he would have said something quietly practical that cut straight to the point, the way he always did. He would have reminded me that the goal was never to be right. The goal was to keep the people you love close enough to keep trying. I think we're still trying. All of us. That's enough for now. I've been thinking a lot lately about the difference between trust and oversight. For most of my adult life, I treated them like opposites. Like watching too closely meant you didn't truly believe in someone. I gave Teresa access to my card and then looked away because looking away felt like the generous thing to do. It felt like faith. What I understand now is that faith in a person and responsibility for your own finances are two completely separate things. One has nothing to do with the other. I could have checked my statement every month and still trusted my daughter-in-law completely. Those two things were never in conflict. I made them conflict in my own head, and that cost me. That's the part that took me the longest to sit with. Not what Teresa did, as wrong as it was, but the part I played by not paying attention. I'm not saying I deserved it. I'm saying that when you hand someone access to something that belongs to you and then close your eyes, you've made a choice. And choices have consequences that don't care whether your intentions were good. I've lived long enough to know that most of the hard things in life don't arrive as disasters. They arrive as small decisions, stacked quietly on top of each other. Until one Tuesday morning you open an app and the whole stack falls over at once. That's what happened to me. It wasn't one big betrayal. It was 2 years of small ones and 2 years of me not looking. What I'm most proud of, if I'm honest, is how I handled it when I finally did look. I sat with it for 24 hours. I didn't call Kevin in a panic. I didn't text Teresa something I couldn't take back. I thought about what I actually wanted the outcome to be, and then I moved toward that outcome steadily. That kind of steadiness doesn't come naturally to most people. It came to me from decades of hard situations, raising kids on a tight budget, losing Gerald, managing a classroom full of teenagers who were testing every limit I had. Life had already taught me that the quietest response is usually the most powerful one. And Kevin, watching my son sit at that kitchen table and hear something uncomfortable about his marriage, and then say, "We'll make it right," instead of getting defensive, that was worth something to me. That was the boy I raised, showing up in the man he became. That doesn't happen by accident either. It happens because somewhere along the way he learned that accountability isn't an attack, it's just the truth asking to be dealt with. The cardinal came back to the feeder this morning. I watched him for a while before I came inside to write this. Gerald would have liked knowing that bird keeps coming back. He believed in returning to the places where you've been fed. I think that's right. I think that's true for people too. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to get everything right the first time. But we do have to be willing to look at our bank statements, at our relationships, at ourselves, and do something honest with what we find. That's the only part we actually control.